Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
All right, so today we're going to cover the second wave of immigration, which is the immigration of the Irish and the German immigrants. So the United States had multiple waves of immigration. The first wave of immigration was when the British immigrated to America in the early 17th century when they established Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. In the early 19th century, many other European countries were suffering from famines, government upheaval, stuff like that. So the middle half of the 19th century, between the years of about 1840 and 1860, more than 1.5 times the population of Ireland, approximately about 2.7 million, and close to 1.7 million Germans immigrated to the United States. During the second wave of immigration, there was only about 400,000 British or people from England who came over to the United States during the 1840s and 1860s, which leaves a total of about 4.5 million Europeans coming to America during this time. So most Europeans left to escape things like civil unrest, severe unemployment, inconceivable hardships at home over in Europe. And because this wave happened during the Industrial Revolution, despite many numerous anti-immigrant movements, it affected nearly every city in the United States. Between 1840 and 1860, over 4.5 million of these immigrants came here from northern and western parts of Europe, and many of the emerging factories in the United States were able to absorb these immigrants who came over here to find work. Immigrants were able to find work in unskilled factory labor jobs. These factories were hiring people that required no skill. They built canals, they constructed railroads, stuff like that. They became involved in just about every labor-intensive endeavor that the country could offer. Most of the country that we have today was built on the backs of immigrants. So what type of factors are there in reasons for people to immigrate places? Well, you have two types of factors: push factors and pull factors. Push factors are events or situations that actually push you out of the country. That would be something like starvation, poverty, lack of political freedom, pushing away from that country. Pull factors would be factors that pulled you into the country that you're going to. So that would be for jobs, for more freedoms, for equality, for available land. Things that pulled you into somewhere. So we had the Irish and the Germans both having push factors, and we also had the pull factors. So let's attack the Irish immigrants first. Their push factor was they left Ireland because after 3 years of a failed potato harvest in 1840s, people were starving to death. And this is the Great Irish Potato Famine. This potato famine killed over 750,000 people in Ireland. And like I said before, about 2.7 million Irish citizens moved to the United States. They moved to places in the northeastern part of the country, the New England part of the country, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, those areas. They couldn't afford to buy any real property, so they settled in these cheap, overcrowded tenement buildings that were stinky, they were dirty, they were disgusting, but they were cheap. Men took low-paying jobs that required no skill. They dug canals, they worked on building railroads, and women worked as domestic servants for wealthy families. And the Irish population in the United States was actually so much that it was more than half of the Irish population, and there are still more Irish Americans today in America than there are Irish nationals. So that's how many Irish people immigrated to the United States between the 1840s and the 1860s. The other ones we're talking about here is the German. Between the 1840 and 1860s, about 1.7 million Germans were pushed out of Germany because of political reasons. They fled to escape the economic hardship, the riots, and the rebellion that wound up leading to the political upheaval in the German Revolution in 1848. these were not many countries that allowed German immigrants in there at the time, so America was really one of their only choices. And when the Irish moved into the northeastern cities, the Germans actually saved more money. They had more money when they moved over here, and they were able to move to the Midwest areas, places like St. Louis, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, and they were able to purchase land and farm in the rural areas. Okay, so they weren't like the Irish getting jam-packed in those cities. They were forced to take these low-paying jobs: tailors, seamstresses, bricklayers, servants, clerks, bakers, things like that. So with the vast number of Irish and German immigrants that came to America, there was a lot of anti-immigration hostilities which erupted against them. Some of the hostilities were political. Many European immigrants became Democrats because they would traditionally side with the commoners and the immigrants. Some hostilities were religious-based because the Germans and the Irish were Roman Catholic, and the Americans were mostly Protestants. And the final hostility that was directed toward the Irish and the Germans was because they took low-paying factory jobs, and the nativists, people who were born in America, they did not like that. That these immigrants would be willing to work for nothing, and all of a sudden signs blazing Nina or No Irish Need Apply really began to flood the country. So we had lots of anti-immigration movements. Ethnic and anti-Catholic rioting spread throughout the northeastern cities. Most Americans in the 1800s were Protestants, like I said, and this new wave of immigration where Catholics and Protestants and Catholics didn't get along. Religious conflicts erupted in the streets, dozens are killed, buildings were burned, and many of these native-born Americans, what we called nativists, opposed to immigration because their fear of losing the jobs to the immigrants who would work for lower wages, and these Americans were called nativists. Nativists were these Americans who opposed immigration and favored people from their own country. So it would be from America. Do these type of things happen today? Sure. Every time there's a major immigration inflow into the United States, yes, we always have these type of conflicts arising because a lot of people did not want natives to come over here and take lower paying jobs. Americans felt that they should have the higher paying jobs. They were the ones that lived here. They were the ones that who spent the time here and dedicated their lives to here. So almost overnight, nativists were forming political parties to combat these new immigrants, to keep Catholics and immigrants out of public office. And in 1849, the nativists founded a political organization named the Know Nothing Party. And at the top of their agenda was to make life increasingly difficult for these immigrants to become American citizens and to keep them out of the government. Part of the Know Nothing platform was to make it mandatory that these immigrants lived in the United States for 21 years before they become citizens. By the 1950s, this nativism has spread throughout American politics, with nativist candidates winning elections in 7 states and narrowly being defeated in 5 more. So you look at that, and that's 12 states that nativist Know Nothing Party was actually becoming in charge of the politics in these states. So that's how much these Irish and German immigrants were really feeling the pressure. It wasn't just nativists that were giving the Irish and the Germans the problems with coming over here and being immigrants. Another thing that the nativists really started to control was political corruption. There was political corruption that ran rampant during this second wave of immigration and urbanization. The political corruption, these groups known as political machines, were established to strongly influence the city, the county, and even the federal politics. Political machines would use legal and illegal means to get their candidates elected into public office. And these quote-unquote machines would especially be harsh towards the new immigrants when it came to political elections. Legally, these political machines might use tactics like humanitarian aid to gain immigrant votes for their candidate. Like, what would sway a starving immigrant more than offering them food and monetary aid with nothing being expected in return? But kind of like, hey, if I'm this goon right here and I'm standing by the ballot box, you're going to come in and vote and see me here. Was it illegal that I gave you food or gave you money to help you out? No. But when you saw me standing at the ballot box, you'd be like, maybe I should, vote for the guy that he wants. I remember him. He really helped me out. So that's legal. That's okay. You could do that. But also they did things illegally, like stuffing ballot boxes with their votes for the candidate. They would bribe immigrant voters for their support. They would go as far to bribe the vote counters, the people who would actually count the votes. And they would treat these new immigrants so poorly that they used violence against them to even persuade their votes. Now, I'm talking about this illegal stuff. Some of it was kind of funny. A guy could go in with a full beard and he would vote, and then he would come out and shave it into a goatee, and then he would go in and vote, and then he could come out and shave just into a mustache, and then go in and vote, and then he would shave off the mustache. 4 votes for one guy. I mean, these political machines would stop at nothing to go ahead and get their votes. Violence, ballot boxing, stuffing, and anything along those lines. So while immigrants in opposition to political machines were punished more often than not, supporters of the political machines were rewarded with government jobs. The most notorious political machine was none other than New York City's Tammany Hall, headed by William Marcy Boss Tweed. That's this cartoon right here. This is supposed to be Boss Tweed with a bag full of money at his head. He was infamous for being a terrible person who stole millions upon millions of dollars from the city of New York. And when finally was caught, he was sent to life in prison. And he wasn't even caught in the United States. He was caught over in Europe. So these political machines would actually meet their demise during the progressive era of the United States. So this is covering the Irish, the German immigrants, and the nativists, and the opposition that they faced when they came to America.